The lot was alive with activity. Polished cars lined the rows, gleaming under the sunlight. Staff moved with efficiency, checking details, straightening brochures, answering phone calls. Customers wandered between vehicles, leaning in to inspect interiors, comparing models, asking questions. It was a normal busy day, or so it seemed. A man walked in. He didn't stride with the confidence of an owner. He didn't wave at the staff or flash any signs of recognition. He was dressed simply: a dark jacket, plain shirt, casual trousers. No entourage, no flashy watch, no obvious status. Just a calm, measured walk across the lot. His presence was almost invisible at first. Staff greeted him politely but routinely, assuming he was just another potential buyer. He nodded occasionally, observed quietly, and moved slowly, pretending to browse the vehicles like everyone else. He stopped by a sleek black SUV, resting a hand lightly on the hood. His eyes scanned the details, his expression neutral, composed. Staff nearby exchanged the usual smiles, offering brochures and answering questions. They had no idea who they were speaking to. A young salesman approached him with a confident smile. "Can I help you find something today?" he asked. The man didn't respond immediately. He simply observed the lot, the staff, the customers. His calm patience created a quiet tension, though no one realized it yet. He picked up a key from a nearby display table and inspected it briefly, nodding almost imperceptibly to himself. The salesman followed politely, explaining features, offering options, unaware that this man was silently taking in everything, not as a customer, but as the owner. The man walked further down the row, stopping occasionally to glance at cars, watching interactions between staff and customers. Each exchange, each gesture was noted in his calm, composed way. He said nothing. He argued with no one. He revealed nothing. The lot continued its routine, unaware that their guest was anything but ordinary. And then, just as he was about to leave the front row, a small detail caught his eye: a hidden transaction, a hurried exchange between two staff members behind the service desk. Something subtle, almost imperceptible, yet enough to make him pause. No one noticed the shift in his gaze, but in that moment, the quiet patience of a man disguised as a customer became the first step toward uncovering a secret that would change everything at his own car lot. The car lot had a reputation that went beyond the cars it sold. It wasn't just a business, it was a symbol of prestige. Every detail mattered: the shine of the vehicles, the alignment of brochures, the way staff moved and spoke. Customers didn't come here just to buy, they came to be seen, to feel a sense of exclusivity. The staff reflected that environment perfectly. Polished shoes, crisp uniforms, carefully maintained smiles. Each employee had been trained to anticipate questions before they were asked, to guide clients through the lot seamlessly. Mistakes were rare because perfection was expected, and anyone who appeared uncertain or out of place immediately drew attention. The man walked through this space calmly. He didn't fidget, he didn't look lost, he didn't smile or nod unnecessarily. To anyone else, he was a quiet, polite customer browsing in a methodical way. But every gesture, every observation he made was intentional. He was learning, noting, and silently processing everything around him. The lot's atmosphere was a combination of activity and control. Salespeople moved efficiently, answering questions and demonstrating features. Customers discussed models, pricing, and financing options. The sun reflected off the car's polished surfaces, casting bright, natural light over the scene. Every reflection, every shadow, every glance carried information. From his perspective, nothing escaped notice. Staff interactions, subtle expressions, the way paperwork was handled, even the small gestures of those managing the lot's operations, all of it was catalogued quietly, without confrontation or comment. Some employees glanced at him occasionally, assuming he was indecisive or meticulous. Others whispered to one another about his calm demeanor, wondering why he seemed so observant. No one realized that he wasn't just a customer. This quiet observation is important. It builds tension and gives the audience a sense of anticipation. The man paused in front of a high-end SUV, inspecting the tires, running his hand along the side, as if considering a purchase. A salesman approached with the usual questions and friendly offers. He smiled, extended a hand, and said, "Looking for something specific today?" The man didn't answer immediately. He observed the way the salesman spoke, noting tone, posture, and subtle gestures. He noticed that one of the salespeople had been rushing paperwork earlier, a slight irregularity in an otherwise orderly day. Nothing overt. Nothing dramatic, but it was enough to make him pause and pay attention. The car lot was a place of status, appearances, and expectations. Customers assumed authority rested in uniformed staff or management titles. But the man's quiet presence disrupted that assumption. No one could read him. No one could anticipate his next move. That created an invisible pressure in the space, slowly building tension without any confrontation. Nearby customers began to notice the interaction subtly. Not loudly, but in small ways, glances, heads turning, quiet whispers. People were instinctively curious about this unusually composed individual who wasn't being impressed by the usual displays of service. The lot continued its routine. Staff greeted each visitor, answered questions, and arranged test drives. But the man's calm focus didn't go unnoticed. His attention to detail, the way he studied every exchange, made the room feel different, slightly smaller, slightly more conscious of behavior. By the time the man reached the far side of the lot, he had noticed patterns in staff behavior, small shortcuts, and moments where attention wavered. Each small observation added to a picture forming in his mind, one that would soon reveal a secret hiding in plain sight. And yet he remained calm. No arguments, no confrontation, no display of authority, just presence, patience, and observation, the quiet tools of someone in control, even when disguised as just another customer. The man continued to move through the lot, quietly observing, noting every small detail. Staff interacted with him politely, as they would with any other customer, unaware of his true identity. Yet subtle behaviors caught his attention, small shortcuts, hurried gestures, whispers exchanged between employees, and an occasional glance that seemed intentionally vague. He approached a sales desk where two staff members were handling paperwork. Their conversation stopped briefly when they noticed him, but they continued with hurried efficiency, clearly anxious about finishing their task. He leaned against a car calmly, silently watching. There was no accusation, no anger, just a steady gaze that seemed to magnify every movement. The subtle tension in the lot was growing, though no one realized it. Customers were still browsing, staff still performing their duties, but there was a slight pause in the rhythm of the place. A sales assistant who had been guiding a family toward a new SUV noticed the man's calm scrutiny. He hesitated, uncertain if he should approach him. This was exactly what the man wanted. Observation, not confrontation. Every detail he collected mattered. A senior staff member approached, smiling politely. "Can I help you with anything?" he asked. The man nodded slightly but didn't speak immediately. Instead, he glanced toward the far corner of the lot, where a few employees were quickly moving documents and keys between desks. His eyes lingered there longer than necessary, enough for him to notice something unusual. One of the junior staff members was sliding paperwork discreetly into a drawer rather than placing it in the proper file. The calm precision in which he observed went unnoticed by everyone else. The staff continued their performance, but the man's attention to detail created a quiet pressure in the room. He didn't move aggressively or confront anyone. He simply watched. His presence alone began to expose cracks in the lot's usual order. Nearby customers noticed small cues. A man adjusting his tie paused mid-step, glancing toward the observing figure. Another leaned closer to his companion, whispering something under his breath. The ripple of awareness spread subtly through the room. Have you ever realized something important was being hidden, but didn't know who to trust? The man's calm demeanor amplified the tension. He didn't raise his voice or make sudden movements. He simply observed, noting each detail with quiet authority. Even the smallest staff misstep, which might have gone unnoticed otherwise, stood out to him. One employee approached another to ask a question, but hesitated when their eyes met his. There was an unspoken awareness that something was off, though no one could articulate it. The atmosphere subtly shifted, conversations slowed, hands lingered on paperwork. Every glance toward the observing man carried a sense of accountability they didn't know they were under. He moved toward the corner of the lot again, noting more inconsistencies, keys not logged properly, forms misplaced, interactions that seemed rehearsed rather than genuine. It was clear that someone was trying to hide something, but they hadn't realized that the person watching them was the owner himself, disguised as a regular customer. The tension was palpable. Staff members whispered to one another, trying to maintain composure while feeling the invisible scrutiny. Customers sensed it too, though they couldn't place why. The calm, observant figure had become a silent spotlight, illuminating mistakes without saying a word. By the time he paused near the service desk, the picture was complete in his mind. He had seen the missteps, the shortcuts, the small, secretive behaviors. All that remained was the moment of confrontation. And yet he remained calm, no display of power, no dramatic gesture, just quiet authority, patience, and presence, the subtle but unmistakable tools of someone who already held complete control. Seagal moved slowly along the rows of vehicles, his presence calm, almost unnoticeable at first. He didn't speak. He didn't point out errors or call attention to himself. Every motion was deliberate but understated, each step measured as if he were merely browsing like any other customer. Yet, there was an invisible weight to him, a quiet authority that seemed to draw attention without effort. The staff were unaware of his scrutiny. They continued their routines, checking cars, handling keys, and speaking with customers. A junior salesperson hurriedly passed some paperwork to a senior colleague, who glanced at it quickly, nodded, and set it aside. To any casual observer it looked like efficiency, but Stephen noticed the slight deviation from protocol. The files should have been logged in sequence. A small misstep, but enough for him to note mentally. He paused near a luxury SUV, standing with his hands resting lightly on the hood. His eyes scanned the lot, observing interactions from a distance. He didn't frown, he didn't raise his voice. He simply watched, letting each detail register in his mind. Staff moved around him, oblivious to the silent assessment taking place. The subtle pressure he exerted didn't go unnoticed. A few employees glanced at him out of the corner of their eyes, sensing something unusual but unable to pinpoint it. Their movements slowed slightly, gestures became more careful, and whispers between colleagues increased. The calm observer had shifted the energy of the lot without a single word. Customers, too, began to sense the difference. Heads turned subtly, conversations paused mid-sentence, and curiosity rippled through the space. Something about this unassuming customer drew attention, though no one could articulate why. By remaining calm and observant, Stephen increases tension and draws focus without confrontation. He walked toward the far corner where staff often managed back-office transactions. Two employees were moving files quickly between desks, speaking in hushed tones. One handed a small envelope to another, who tucked it hastily into a drawer. Nothing overt, but the action was suspicious. Stephen stopped a few feet away, observing silently. He didn't accuse, he didn't question. His presence alone created a sense of awareness that made even small movements seem significant. Nearby customers noticed the scene subtly. Some whispered to their companions, glancing toward him. A couple of staff members exchanged cautious looks, wondering why this regular customer was paying so much attention. The quiet observation amplified the tension without anyone realizing it. He walked slowly back toward the center of the lot, keeping his calm, composed demeanor. He approached a test drive area where another staff member was interacting with a customer. The employee's nervous glance toward him betrayed awareness that he was being watched. Every minor hesitation, every uncertain movement, was catalogued silently in Stephen's mind. Even though no one realized it, the balance of control had shifted. The lot, which had operated on appearances and protocol, now felt subtly dominated by someone they assumed was powerless, a quiet observer who noticed everything. The day went on, with Stephen moving between vehicles, scanning and noting irregularities. Staff unconsciously straightened their posture, walked a little slower, and exchanged more glances. They didn't understand why, but the tension was there. Every movement, every interaction, every small oversight had been noticed by a man who appeared to be an ordinary customer. And yet, the subtle power of his calm observation had changed the dynamics of the entire lot. The lot had quieted just enough for the tension to be palpable. Staff members moved carefully now, almost as if they could feel the weight of Seagal's calm presence from across the space. Every glance he cast, every pause in his steps, seemed to amplify the unease. He didn't speak, he didn't accuse, he simply observed, and that was enough. A junior salesperson who had been handling keys noticed him walking slowly toward the far corner. The young employee's hand trembled slightly as he attempted to stack files neatly. Another staff member glanced over nervously, realizing the man they assumed was just another customer seemed to be paying far too much attention to every action. Stephen stopped by a row of high-end sedans. He examined a car briefly, running a hand along its side, but his eyes weren't on the vehicle. They were on the staff, subtly noting each irregular movement, each hesitation. It was as if the lot itself had shifted in response to him. Nearby, a pair of sales assistants whispered to one another, glancing repeatedly toward him. One said something inaudible, quickly swallowing the words. Their body language was telling, nervous, cautious, aware that the usual confidence they displayed had evaporated under the weight of observation. A senior staff member, usually so commanding, found himself shifting in place, adjusting a pen on the counter with exaggerated care. He glanced at Stephen briefly and then at his colleagues, trying to understand why this seemingly ordinary man commanded so much attention. The calm, deliberate behavior of Stephen Seagal was doing something subtle but powerful. It wasn't confrontation that forced attention, it was observation. His presence amplified every small mistake and every hidden action, making them visible to everyone in the lot. And then he noticed it, a small, almost imperceptible movement near the back office. Two employees were exchanging documents, glancing nervously toward each other. One slipped a folder into a drawer that shouldn't have contained it. It was minor, almost invisible, but it was enough for Stephen to take note. His eyes lingered just long enough to confirm that something was being hidden. The tension in the lot escalated. Staff members felt eyes on them even when they were occupied with customers. Conversations slowed, smiles became tight, and glances toward Stephen increased. His quiet vigilance had created a ripple effect, making everyone aware that their actions were being carefully assessed. Nearby customers began to notice subtle signs of unease. Some tilted their heads slightly, observing interactions that would normally go unnoticed. The energy in the lot had changed. What had once been a routine, polished environment now carried a quiet sense of apprehension. What would you do if you realized someone was watching your every move, and they were more powerful than you thought? Stephen moved closer to the back corner, his gaze unwavering. He didn't speak, but every movement in that area was now under his silent scrutiny. Employees fumbled slightly with paperwork, straightened their posture, and exchanged anxious glances. The hidden secret, once discreet, was now exposed under the quiet pressure of observation. Every action, every hesitation, every nervous glance was catalogued. Stephen remained composed, calm, and neutral, yet the weight of his presence was undeniable. The lot had shifted, the staff's confidence had eroded, and the secret, previously unnoticed, was about to be fully revealed. Stephen Seagal moved calmly toward the back office, his steps measured, his expression neutral. The moment had arrived, though no one in the lot realized it yet. The hidden actions he had observed, the hurried exchanges, the misplaced paperwork, the subtle attempts at concealment, were about to be addressed. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't storm in, he simply walked. The staff sensed something immediately. Their earlier unease had intensified into silent panic. One of the employees fumbled with a set of keys, knocking them slightly against the counter. Another quickly straightened files that had been hastily stacked, pretending nothing was out of the ordinary. But the calm presence of the man they assumed was just a customer had made everything seem suspicious. Stephen stopped in front of the two employees who had been exchanging documents. He didn't gesture, he didn't accuse. He simply looked at them, his eyes steady and unwavering. The room felt heavier. Conversations elsewhere had slowed. The hum of the lot seemed quieter. Every eye was drawn to him. He spoke finally, his voice even low and measured. "I believe there's something here that shouldn't be." The employees froze, not out of fear, but out of realization. The calm authority in that single sentence carried more weight than any yelling or reprimand could have. One of them stammered, trying to explain themselves. "Where we were just..." Stephen held up a hand, silent but commanding. "No need to explain." His gaze shifted to the documents, then back to the staff, and finally around the room. "I think it's clear now that some actions here have been mismanaged." The words hit with quiet precision. This wasn't public shaming, there was no drama. Yet the impact was immediate. Staff members who had been confident minutes ago were now visibly shaken. The secret, once subtle, was fully exposed under his calm observation. Nearby employees watched in awe. Some whispered to each other, unable to believe that the quiet man they had assumed was just another customer had been assessing everything with precision. Customers, too, noticed the tension. The lot that had seemed routine now carried a palpable sense of authority and accountability. Stephen continued, his tone still calm. I don't need to raise my voice to see what's happening here, but I do expect honesty and respect for the rules of this lot." The senior staff member, who had previously been the most confident, nodded quickly, acknowledging both the observation and the lesson without a word. The younger employees swallowed hard, understanding that their actions had been seen, evaluated, and corrected not by anger, but by presence and awareness. Stephen walked toward the main lot, pausing only briefly to observe each staff member. The subtle message was clear: authority doesn't always need to be loud. Presence, patience, and awareness can command respect more effectively than confrontation. The moment resonated throughout the entire space. Staff returned to their duties, more attentive now, more careful. Customers went back to browsing, sensing the invisible shift in energy, though they couldn't articulate why. The lot had been subtly transformed by the calm authority of one man. Stephen paused near a luxury SUV one final time, giving the staff a subtle nod, not condescending, not triumphant, just acknowledging that the lesson had been understood. Then, without fanfare, he returned to browsing, calm as ever. The lot had returned to its usual rhythm, but the energy was different now. Staff moved with renewed care, their movements deliberate and attentive. Every interaction felt more precise, more thoughtful. Customers noticed it too, not in loud gestures, but in subtle shifts: the way employees explained details, the extra care in handling paperwork, the quiet attentiveness to questions. Seagal walked slowly among the cars, observing without interrupting. He didn't need to confront anyone further. The lesson had already been delivered. His calm, patient presence had shifted the dynamics of the lot entirely. Authority had been asserted, not with anger or loud demands, but with quiet observation and measured action. The employees were still processing what had happened. The ones directly involved in the secretive exchanges were humbled, no longer confident or careless. They understood now that even the smallest misstep could be noticed, even by someone who appeared to be just another customer. Respect and responsibility had been quietly re-established. A young salesperson approached Stephen hesitantly, unsure whether to speak. He cleared his throat. "Sir, thank you for noticing, for pointing things out." Stephen simply nodded. His expression remained calm, composed, and neutral. No lecture, no anger, just the subtle authority of someone who had seen everything and chosen to teach through presence rather than confrontation. Nearby, customers continued browsing, but their whispers and observations hinted at understanding. They sensed a different kind of power at play, a quiet authority that didn't need to be announced or flaunted. The lot, which had seemed ordinary moments before, now carried a weight of awareness and respect that hadn't existed earlier. Stephen paused near the service desk, giving the staff a brief, knowing look. Not a glare, not a smile, just acknowledgement. It was enough to communicate the lesson had been received and change had begun. Every small action, every careful movement, and every attentive glance in the lot now carried a new sense of awareness. Staff walked with consciousness, customers noticed subtle shifts, and the invisible order of the lot had been restored. It wasn't punishment, it wasn't humiliation. It was a lesson in vigilance, respect, and responsibility. Have you ever noticed that people respect authority more when it doesn't announce itself? Stephen finally moved to the exit, walking past the rows of polished vehicles, his posture calm and assured. Staff and customers alike watched him go, carrying with them a silent understanding. Appearances can be misleading, assumptions can be dangerous, and respect is earned quietly, not demanded loudly. The lot resumed its rhythm fully, yet the memory of the day's events would not fade. Employees would be more mindful. Customers would notice the subtle changes in attention and care. And the lesson delivered without confrontation, without drama, would leave a lasting impression. The quiet authority of Seagal had changed the environment permanently. The lot was more organized, more attentive, and more respectful, not because of fear, but because of awareness. By the end of the day, the staff understood something fundamental: power isn't always loud, lessons aren't always shouted, and true respect is earned through presence, patience, and observation. And in that quiet realization, the story closed, leaving the lot, the staff, and the viewers with a lasting understanding of authority, humility, and vigilance.